starting with Chapter 2, The Problem Has a Cure, from You Can Change the World, The Christopher Approach by James Keller. The problem has a cure. Those people who are not governed by God will be ruled by tyrants. William Penn. Over 250 years ago, when the Charter of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was being written, the Quaker William Penn sounded that very warning. Today, those words have for us a far greater, even a life and death significance. Make no mistake about it, we are at the crossroads of civilization. We stand on the brink of the greatest peace the world has ever enjoyed, or the most terrible nightmare of misery and chaos that mankind has ever known. The issue is clear and narrows down to what is truth with regard to the human being. If he is not a creature of God, and the noblest act of God, with rights from him, then he is just a clod of earth, or the merest tool of the almighty state. He must be one or the other. He cannot be both. Well, we can postulate creation without saying that automatically the human being is, the greatest. Especially automatically, right? Perhaps if they maintain certain things and do other things, but, because they're beings of choice. Karl Marx, the arch-prophet of communism. I don't know, I thought that was Paul, the Christian saint, in his Das Kapital expressed this fundamental point most clearly. The democratic concept of man is false because it is Christian. That's going to take some explaining. He wrote, the democratic concept holds that each man is a sovereign being. This is the illusion, dream, and postulate of Christianity. First edition, MEII, page 590. In this, Marx was one with Adolf Hitler. In fact, Hitler took much of the Marxian philosophy and integrated it into his Nazi doctrine. Well, the Nazis, that was a slur before Hitler by certain people in the USSR. We can say NSDAP, because he did take over that, but voicing with the same complete disregard for the sacred worth of the individual. That's going too far with that statement, too. I'm not taking Hitler's side, but, exaggerating doesn't help. As quoting in The Voice of Destruction by Hermann Rauschning, here are Hitler's own words. To the Christian doctrine of the infinite significance of the human soul, I oppose with icy clarity the saving doctrine of the nothingness and insignificance of the human being. And those missing words or paragraphs could change your mind about that quote, but thus, both Marx and Hitler testified that democracy depends on Christianity. They realized that to destroy all forms of democratic government, the godless must discredit and eventually exterminate Christianity. Before proceeding with suggestions on where to go and what to do to avert this threatened disaster and put into practice the cure we have at our disposal, those who would be Christophers might do well to review briefly the particular problems that face our country and the world. Commenting editorially on the situation not long ago, Fortune magazine went on to record with, "We Americans are unhappy. We are not happy about ourselves in relation to America. As we look out at the rest of the world, we are confused. We don't know what to do. As we look toward the future, our own future and the future of other nations, we are filled with foreboding. We know how lucky we are compared to all the rest of mankind. At least 2/3 of us are just plain rich compared to all the rest of the human family. Rich in food, rich in clothes, rich in entertainment and amusement. Rich in leisure. Rich. Yet we also know that the sickness of the world is also our sickness. We too have miserably failed to solve the problems of our epoch, and nowhere in the world have men's failures been so little excusable as in the United States of America. Nowhere has the contrast been so great between reasonable hope of our age and the actual facts of failures and frustration. Naturally, we have no peace. Well, the truths of other cultures and all that sort of stuff is, at the time, was far less available in America than other places and condemned to the point that why would you even want to look into it, even though there were people publishing sacred books from the East and stuff like this. And if you got those books, there may be no one in town that you could, trust talking about them. And the editorial continued. But even beyond this necessity for living with our own misdeeds, there is another reason why there is no peace in our hearts. It is that we have not been honest with ourselves. In this whole matter of war and peace especially, we have been at various times and in various ways false to ourselves, false to each other, false to the facts of history, and false to the future. If our leaders have deceived us, it is merely because we ourselves have insisted on being deceived. Their deceitfulness has resulted from our own moral and intellectual confusion. The trouble is not with the facts. The trouble is that clear and honest inferences have not been drawn from the facts. The day-to-day present is clear. The issues of tomorrow are being befogged. If we dodge the issue, we shall flounder for 10 or 20 or 30 bitter years in a chartless and meaningless series of disasters. Well, he's quite chipper, isn't he? The greatest obstacle. As the editor makes evident, we have seemed unable to cope with the 1,001 problems all over the globe, which the cessation of World War II has brought. Oh, that's a title for a book there, right? And these problems have become magnified as the Earth has shrunk in proportion to the advances of modern science, with its jet-propelled planes faster than the speed of sound, and its atom bomb, which can level all humanity to the common denominator of a lifeless, fetid pulp. But great as these problems are, perhaps the most formidable problem of all, which we have failed so far as to solve, is represented by the force of a group of men banded together to eliminate God from the face of the earth. Well, that's not quite the Nietzschean thing, but the greatest obstacle to our finding a solution to this problem, as well as to most of the others, is the apathy which comes from a lack of understanding that we followers of Christ have the salvation of the world in our hands. Far too many people are deluded into believing that we are living in a brave new world where everything is different and values human values, not what they used to be. But let's not fool ourselves. It is still the same old world. Conditions have changed drastically. Still, we are fundamentally the same. The world will never be more than we are. If the world is in bad shape, it is because too many of us are in bad condition. Many people are inclined to think once communism is on the wane all over the globe, mankind will settle back automatically to an era of peace. But there wasn't one when the communist thing exploded. Most emphatically, that cannot be true. I mean, look at some Buddhist societies. The communism is sort of how they had peace. If communism were to disappear overnight, which it most certainly will not, the situation which makes all forms of totalitarianism possible still remains. And not only does it remain, it grows steadily worse. It is the deficiency disease in our society, which, like the deficiency disease in a starving person, paves the way for an attack of scurvy or beriberi, poisons our national and international bloodstreams. Those who fall for the attractive deceptions of materialists are not merely those who are economically insecure, oddly enough. In far greater numbers, they are those who have no spiritual moorings, no fixed beliefs in the fatherhood of God and the dignity of man. Well, again, humanity has to maintain its dignity. It has to, it can maintain its dignity and all that. But the fatherhood of God, that's, God seems beyond that sort of thing. I understand the metaphor, but in the United States alone, according to one prominent government official, the communist, which numbering less than 100,000 card-carrying party members, have in tow about 5 million fellow travelers and sympathizers, and significantly, many of these are middle-class, well-to-do, confused and with a little idea of true values. They are like immature children who fall for the glib half-truths of the kidnapper. Now, this idea that anybody's all wrong and all that other stuff, don't people realize that? Well, I guess not everybody realizes that, but that actually ends up attracting people to some of these movements. It is a hope and dream of the communists to build the 5 million into 12 or 15 million, and then to revolutionize this country out of its present democratic form of government. And that's sort of going on now. It doesn't take a majority. It just takes a firm group. And if that firm group is supported by these elites who don't really, don't care what system of government, just as long as they can use it, right? Now, that's simplifying the matter, but yeah, certain ones of these, top families have proven themselves, the top 13 families in terms of wealth and power, they've proven themselves. They'll work on any side of the fence. And those lesser on that move their way up have, sort of agreed into that too. But yeah, it doesn't even take 20% of the people to change the form of the government. That can easily be done because these millions will come, but with few exceptions, from among the 100 million in our land who are living off the benefits of Christianity, but who are becoming less and less conscious of the great Christian fundamentals which make all their freedoms possible. The Founding Fathers were influenced by more than Christianity, and some of their ideas in terms of that can be found in other places, but not Christianity. Of this 100 million, 70 million belong to no church. Another 30 million, while on the books of various denominations, have drifted so far away that, for all practical purposes, they should properly be classified as not belonging. As time goes on to them, even the most elementary truths will fade into the hidden background as more and more people come to stand for less and less. Most are against communism now, just as they thought they were against Nazism and fascism. But they don't know what they are for. They talk vaguely about the free way of life and the need for democracy, yet most of them have only a faint idea of the cause which makes these effects possible. They are unaware that every time this cause is removed, out the window go the effects as well. If this steady trend towards paganism continues, again, that doesn't make any sense. Calling it paganism, it's only a matter of time before our nation will collapse, more from deterioration from within than from any force without. And yeah, because paganism, heathenism has nothing to do with whatever, but in Christianity at the time, pagan and heathen meant you weren't Christian, or you were monotheist even.